This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, promoting the free enterprise system to enhance economic competitiveness. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and a very special welcome to two key people at the State Board of Elections. Kimberly Bowers, Vice Chair of the State Board, Charlie Judd, Chair of the State Board. Thank you all for being on. Folks might think there's an election coming up, that they probably have heard about this election. And so we look forward to talking with you all about what the State Board is doing and what's happening around the state, some important dates. So I think we're going to show a picture that has the entire State Board. Right. Since we have two of you here, we don't want to have the other person to be left out. Who's the other person that we're seeing on the screen, Charlie?
The other person that you see on the screen would be Don Palmer, who's the Secretary of the Board, which by structure would be the Chief Operating Officer of the agency, the State Board of Elections. It's a three-member board. Kimberly and I now constitute a quorum. Yeah, but right. We'll not conduct any business today.
That's right. There's been no notice of a meeting going on here.
That's correct.
Right.
Yes, right.
Yes, because one of our earlier programs is on the Freedom of Information Act. So
yes, sir.
We'd have to watch that. And the two of you are volunteers.
That's correct.
Our missing person is the one staff person.
Exactly.
Other staff people there, but he's the head of the agency.
Right. According to the way the board is constituted, began in 1940s. The governor appoints 3 members of the board. The terms serve concurrently. It's a 4-year term. And then the governor designates one of those board members to be the secretary. So it's an unusual structure in that a board member is also the agency head. So we have the volunteer board, and then we have the agency. And that's the structure. And
another part of the structure that the governor appoints 2 from the governor's party and 1 from the other party that's not in the executive branch. And,
that's correct.
And in full disclosure,
I'm in the Democrat.
You're the Democrat.
Seat. Yes.
And I'm in the Republican seat. And we hasten to say that it's a volunteer position. A lot of folks ask us about that, and we jokingly refer to it as a volunteer position because our pay is we get a parking place on the day of the meetings in downtown Richmond somewhere. But like a lot of the boards in the Commonwealth, we serve as volunteers.
So this is your first time to serve on the State Board?
First time to serve. Charlie and I were both appointed the beginning of 2011, and we certainly did not know what we would be in for. I think one of the conversations that we had very early on was the number of board meetings, which is certainly a question most folks ask. And I think our first year we probably met about 15 or 16 times and are continuing to do the busy work. Again, at the volunteer level, but there's certainly a lot of work that's being done monthly with our meetings.
I think, Kimberly, somebody told me that this board met the first year, had more meetings than the previous board did during their term. And that's really only to say that because of this being the first major election of this board, there's been a lot of activity. This board has been very active in offering and giving leadership to the agency.
And what's coming up now in the month of October? There's some dates that you all want to help our viewers know about. And by the way, probably by the time people have checked their mail, they will receive what I've already received, and that's my voter registration card. But those have been mailed out.
Yes.
In fact, I think by the first week of October, all of the 4.7 million voters in Virginia will have received their cards. They're going to be, the in-home date is the first week in October, which really puts in the hands of every voter in Virginia the ability to have the identification that's needed with some tweaks to the voter ID law in Virginia. The governor felt that it was important that those be reissued, and so they were. And so now all the voters in Virginia have two forms of ID. We know that 95% of the voters have a DMV-issued ID, and now 100% of the voters will have the new voter ID card, which will be used. And of course, as Kimberly knows, there are 9 other forms of ID that they can use at the polls.
And I think also one of the things that Charlie and I have really been invested in is the transparency of the process. And certainly for October, as well as the rest of this fall, you'll see things saying, "Are you election ready?" And that is something that we as board members have really been proud to see. We've been doing PSAs, we've been doing announcements, partnering with community groups, and certainly in our role as board members, we want to make sure that not only does the electoral community who works each and every day on the ground have the information, but certainly the election community at large is hearing the updates as well as the coming changes. So everyone will have no problems come November 6th.
In fact, it's an awareness campaign that's been launched, which will create more visibility than I think in a long time about the upcoming election, answering questions before they're asked and encouraging people to, if they're not yet registered, to register, and then making sure they understand that there are any number of forms of ID they can use, because that was a concern about making sure that education cycle occurred. And so there is a fairly aggressive advertising, if you will, campaign, public service announcements, graphics, posters, making sure that people understand here's the new process.
So whatever people are hearing nationally about other states, Virginia, and I can say this as a native Virginian, I guess I'm making a statement as well as asking a question, but Virginia is one that there's so many different kinds of identification you can use that there's no reason anyone to feel like maybe I can't go vote because I don't have some ID.
That's right.
They should have it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of states at the same time as Virginia did come out with very strict voter specific to voting ID, but we have found everything from a student ID to a utility bill, a state government issued ID in another form. So there's other variations that we feel made it pretty fair, given the fact that, you know, you would have to show some form of identification. We also learned that this was not the first time in Virginia. As most of us know, it's a natural thing to go and vote and certainly show your ID, but giving the leeway to then allow, and I think the DMV's done also a wonderful job with their van and other initiatives traveling around the state to still ensure that folks do have voter IDs, but not to limit folks who do not have their ID come Election Day.
I think it's important to make a point about why ID, why bother about having an identification. And really what we're about is to protect the integrity of the process. We want to make sure that the voter rolls are pure, if you will, sanitized and all. But the most important part is that for that person who comes in and identifies themselves as a voter, it's important that we make sure that's in fact who that person is, because there are those who would want to not be honest about that part of it. And we have enough cases to say it makes sense to have a good ID so that we ensure that, that integrity.
So with all of that done, there's no reason why everybody shouldn't vote who's registered to vote. But I think you brought a cartoon with you that while it has a bit of age to it, it still shows the message that we might show our viewers, that cartoon about, I mean, it's disgraceful how few people vote.
It is. If the cartoon's on the screen now, it depicts, this cartoon, by the way, is about 30 years old or more. And so 30 years ago, the folks in Russia would really like to have been able to vote, but they couldn't. It was a different setup, if you will. And at the same time, the folks in China have never had the chance to vote in the democratic process. And so, and here we are blessed in America, in a republic, in a democracy, a republic where every vote counts and every person has an opportunity to participate in that, but they don't. And so this cartoon depicts the folks in Russia demonstrating, if you will, to try to get the right to vote. Same in China. And then the folks in the United States sitting on a couch sound asleep while the elections happen all around them. And that's always been a motivation for me, to see the process followed, to make sure everybody who is eligible to vote registers, educates themselves, and exercises that vote. And you know, even with all of that and with all that we're doing with the promotion, there's still a number of folks out there who will not participate in the process. And so we work real hard to give them that encouragement.
Even some that don't bother to register.
That's right.
To vote.
That's right.
But if you've registered, you know, can't understand why people don't vote.
Right.
That's
Registering is certainly only part of the process. The other piece of it, what I feel is the most important part, is showing up. And certainly Charlie and I came together on this board in early 2011, and that was one of the first things he and I talked about, was just how, even coming from different generations, that we both value the vote and what that means. And certainly 2012 will be a big year on the national level. But it's the local elections, too, that we have to keep in mind. Each and every year in Virginia there is an election. And really looking at and taking a look at issues and seeing who's on the ballot is also just as important when you do show up to vote.
Yeah, and as you all know, and hopefully our viewers do too, they may live in a locality that has a local election going on again this November.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
And at some point in time, they should know there's constitutional amendment.
There are. That's right. There are 2 constitutional amendments that will be on the ballot this year. Yes.
Okay. Now, one has to do with taking of property.
Right. One has to addresses the eminent domain law in Virginia, that the proponents want to give the property owners a little more security, if you will, in that process. And the other has to do with the schedule, and this is almost just kind of tweaking the legislative schedule. The code requires a set date for the reconvene, what is nicknamed the veto session. And traditionally that has fallen to conflict with some religious calendars. And so there was an interest to maybe make that a tad more flexible, but that requires a constitutional amendment. So that's the other item that's on the ballot.
Yeah, that one has kind of gone beneath the radar, as
it
they
has.
say.
It has, yes.
But it's good to have it highlighted so that people know they go in to vote on that.
That's right.
So coming up in October, then there's some. As we move on in through October, there's some deadlines. What's that first deadline, Kimberly?
The biggest one for us in our world and in everybody else's world should be October 15th, and that is for folks who still have yet to register to vote. They can get their applications in. They have to be postmarked by that day. By the time the post office closes that evening, they need to be postmarked in order to ensure that they can vote in November. Also, there are a couple of opportunities on Saturdays, the last 2 Saturdays leading up to the election, for folks to actually go into the registrar's office and vote there on site. Virginia, that's our closest version of early voting, and that will allow members of the community to also go in and vote on those Saturdays prior to the election.
Now I have done that in the past, but I think, is it still the law that when you do that, you have to have some reason that you check on the box of why you're voting early? Is it still?
Yeah, those are still in place.
Yeah.
That list hasn't been expanded. What's been expanded is the window of time to vote absentee. And that's driven by when the ballots are available and made available to the voter. And in Virginia, we now begin, if you will, absentee voting 45 days out from the day of election. So technically, absentee voting began this past Saturday. In fact, some general registrars had some walk-ins on Friday. The absentee process had already begun. And that's good because, especially Virginia having such a military presence, there are a lot of folks that are deployed who are Virginia residents, and they need that time for that ballot to get there and to come back. And so that was a good thing, I think, to have happen. The reasons for voting absentee are varied, but basically it distills down to if you're not going to be in your precinct on election day. That's kind of what drives that, and for all kinds of reasons. You know, there's some folks in some parts of the state that get in their car in the early morning before the polls open to go to work. and commute. And then to commute home, they don't get home in time before the polls even close. That actually happens in Virginia. So at least they have a chance to cast their vote by not having to do it on Election Day.
Well, that really, and to have that time where they can actually go in and do it.
Yes.
On those Saturdays, or they can request the absentee ballot and do it then by mail.
Right, right. In fact, it's probably important to say that the folks are watching now and they're interested in getting an absentee ballot. You can download the application off of the SBE website, which is sbe.virginia.gov. Real simple website, very user-friendly website, lots and lots of help there. You can determine to make sure you're registered. You can find out where you need to vote. All of that is on the website. That's helpful. But you can download the absentee ballot, fill it out, and then it's mailed in. But that can kind of shorten that process a bit by downloading the form.
So the form or something shows you if you live in Henrico, or if you live in Roanoke, or wherever you live, where you
would mail it. That's correct.
So they're not really mailing it to you all, but to the local registrar.
Local registrar's offices. Correct.
Yeah, and again, what that is an application for the ballot. The ballot is then sent to the voter to then fill out, have it witnessed, and then send it back. Probably worth mentioning too is that at least until October 15, you can download the registration form as well, but it's filled out and physically mailed back to the registrar under the same process.
Yeah, it has to be postmarked that day, the deadline,
exactly.
Deadline day. So there could still be some others who might be registering.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And also, just to mention, as Charlie said already, that form can also serve as your change of address. If you're out and about in the community, you can certainly take care of that at the Department of Motor Vehicles, but also the same form that you can actually register as a first-time voter, they will also accept that form. At the bottom it says, where did you reside previously, and you can fill out all the information on the form to ensure that your address change has taken place as well.
Okay, that's helpful. So go back then to what I received in the mail, other people will be receiving. It's mailing to the best address that you have.
Yes.
Now, I'm in the same address, but had that been forwarded to another address, then does that mean that I should make that address change or something before voting time?
I think the best thing to do right now is to when in doubt, just check. Call your local registrar, go online, as Charlie mentioned, find out what address is currently in the database to ensure that if you haven't received that piece of mail, I believe that there is a forwarding address service that is required because it is an official election piece. But if not, I think there are certainly still ways to ensure that you get that new card in time.
Right.
Yeah, because that could be tricky because someone may be voting maybe in the same city, the same county, but voting in a different precinct as a result of their change.
Absolutely.
Well, you've got this educational program going up. I think they've got even some posters that we're going to show people that hopefully they're seeing in other places or in their own localities, but posters that are helpful to.
That's right, David. We have, I think we have some samples that we're displaying on the screen now, and it's all about a visual. You know, there are pictures of people representing different voters, holding up a little sign that would say, "This is the ID I'm going to use," to just let everybody see in a kind of a very clever way that there are a lot of variations of your ID, but to remind them that ID is important more than ever, that they identify themselves as that voter. But here's the neat part about the outreach program. The state board identified about 140, 150 organizations with constituencies, the organizations that would partner with us to get that word out. And we're happy to say that about 30 or 40% of those organizations we consider partners in this effort. So the reason for those graphics and those posters is those are the tools they're using to get that information out. It's a postcard, or what they call a palm card in politics, up to an 11 by 17 poster with that graphic on to just say, here's how easy it is for you. So there's no excuse for you not to vote on November 6th.
So typically, this is the biggest turnout year in Virginia's elections, and I'm sure it will be again. But still, not everyone's going to turn out and vote.
Right.
And now, some people, I'm sure that you've observed this in the meetings you've been in. Some people think that you all have control over local registrars, but it'd probably be helpful to viewers to know what is the relationship between the State Board of Elections and the local registrars.
Well, you jump in here anytime.
Okay.
I can do all the talking, but with the structure, the way the setup, the way the structure was put in place in the 40s, the State Board of Elections is charged with enforcing the election law in Virginia, including financial disclosure, qualification, that kind of thing. And any multi-jurisdictional elections then fall under the direct responsibility of the State Board of elections. So that would be members of Congress, members of the House and Senate in Virginia, the delegates, the senators, where you have multi-jurisdictions, and of course statewide elections. But the local board, and for each of the 135 localities, 134 localities in Virginia, there is a 3-member board of elections and a general registrar. And there is autonomy between the state board and the local board so as to protect the integrity of the process, so that certain interests wouldn't be trickled down, if you will. And it was set up that way for a purpose, and it's a good system, and it works very, very well. The state board will establish guidelines as part of interpreting the code, and so instruct the local boards, but they're autonomous.
And another piece of that is certainly the partnership that we found, not only with the general registrars, but also the electoral board. Charlie and I have been to several uniformity workshops, for example, where electoral board members are on site and there to make sure that they do have all the tools and resources that they need. But we also really listen to the community, because they are the ones that are out there each and every day doing the work that they're doing. And I think Charlie and I have been invited to several activities, as well as on their listserv, to really hear about what things are happening so that we can make more informed decisions when things are presented to us in board meetings as it relates to the electoral board or the GR community. Oftentimes we've asked in the past, is there a GR in the audience who would like to comment on some of the things that we've done? In addition to the agency, I think, doing a lot more work with the community and finding out these are the guidelines, or if we're looking at changes, to put things out there for them to comment on so that we can sort of work in partnership. Because again, 3 people is certainly a small population in comparison to the 134 groups that are represented. So,
now, Kimberly, you're the lone Democrat on this 3-person board. But my understanding and some observation I've done that most matters that you all work on, you work it through together, most matters when you come to vote have been unanimous.
They have been, and I've taken the lead on some of those motions and gotten seconds very eagerly. So, like I said, I think more than ever, you know, this is certainly bipartisan, but also nonpartisan in so many ways. The process itself should have no D or R behind it. The folks who were running each and every day for office, we certainly, Charlie and I both having backgrounds in political work, empathize with those that are out there trying to ensure that they've done all that they need to do in the process. So I really have been pleasantly surprised. We've got a great working relationship, the 3 of us. And as Charlie mentioned, we are not able to talk in between board meetings, but I think we certainly have great meetings where we can actively discuss issues, but also come to a common ground, which has not been too much of a challenge as we've seen in other arenas. So it really has been good for us. And I think the electoral community recognizes the unity that we have as a 3-person body. So it's really been fun.
Just to echo that, before we each took our oath of office, we did talk. But we're happy to say that there has not been a single vote that the board takes, and we vote a lot. Everything is by motion. We operate by motion. And every vote so far, this far into our term, has been 3-0. 3 members, 3-0. So it's
That's
at the point, you
fantastic.
know, when you conduct the meeting and before you wrap the gavel, typically you ask, is there all in favor say aye, and then you usually ask all in opposed say no. don't ask that because I can hear three guys.
All three.
You hear everybody.
And it's, yeah, and we have that.
Well, I regret that we have to wrap the gavel on this session, but our time is
Understood.
up. But thank you both so very much.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank you for having
We
us.
Yes.
look forward to our viewers seeing this.
Thank you, David.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, promoting the free enterprise system to enhance economic competitiveness. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.